Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: Chinese state-backed AI DeepSeek is raising red flags in Washington. GOP lawmakers say it could pose a serious
Chinese leadership.
Before we dive into today's news, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter using the link down below. In tomorrow's newsletter, we're unpacking China's rare earth chokehold on U.S. defense firms and how Beijing's dodging U.S. export bans by smuggling high-end NVIDIA AI chips into the country. It drops Friday morning straight to your inbox. Don't miss it. A group of Republican lawmakers is urging the U.S. Commerce Department to investigate DeepSeek AI over potential national security risks. In a letter released Tuesday, the senators raised concerns that DeepSeek could leak U.S. user data and aid China's military and surveillance operations. They point to official assessments saying DeepSeek has already supported Chinese intelligence and may continue to do so. What makes it especially risky, they argue, is the AI model's open source design. That means developers around the world can access and modify the model, opening the door to possible misuse. One example in the letter explains how it generated instructions for a social media campaign promoting self-harm among teens. On top of that, it has even provided guidance on how to build bioweapons. The senators say locking down these AI systems is critical to staying competitive with China and to keeping sensitive information from being exploited. The Trump administration considered banning DeepSeek earlier in April over similar concerns. The hedge fund backing Chinese AI startup DeepSeek is now under investigation. Authorities in China's Guangdong province are looking into whether a top executive at High Flyer Quant took illegal kickbacks from brokerage commissions. The fund's head of market operations, Li Cheng, has been cooperating with investigators since November and is now formally under investigation. Officials say at least $2.8 million allegedly landed in Li's personal account. The case gained renewed attention because Gao Xiang, a senior executive at China Merchant Securities, is also under investigation. The firm is a cooperation partner of High Flyer Quant. At the time, Gao reportedly accepted about $415,000 worth of gold from a partner connected to Li. Senator Tom Cotton is seeking information from Intel, a tech giant backed by billions in government funds. The concerns are over the company's new CEO and his ties to the Chinese Communist Party. President Trump has weighed in. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
U.S.-based tech giant Intel appointed a new CEO back in March by the name of Tan Litbu. Tan holds leadership positions and has investments in Chinese firms that are linked to the Chinese Communist Party's military. Senator Tom Cotton, in a letter to Intel, raised national security concerns about the implications of these relationships and asked Intel if they required their new CEO to leave those leadership positions and divest from those CCP entities. Senator Cotton also pointed out that Intel received a large U.S. federal grant, $8 billion from the CHIPS and Science Act that was passed a few years ago. Cotton says that since they received such a heavy level of taxpayer dollars, they are subject to a higher level of scrutiny. The new Intel CEO also used to work for Cadence, a company that last week pled guilty to illegally selling and transferring technology to CCP entities. One such entity is described as a restricted PRC military university involved in the deployment of supercomputers with applications for military and nuclear explosive simulations. Now, Tan was serving as the CEO at Cadence at the time when the company was involved in these illegal activities. So for obvious reasons, Cotton is concerned about what that means for sensitive technology that's developed at Intel currently, funded by U.S. tax dollars. Cotton also asked Intel if they knew that the DOJ was investigating this issue when they appointed Tan as their CEO. Trump also commented on the issue, saying that the CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There's no other solution to this problem. Intel responded with a statement to the Epoch Times saying that they will address the questions raised by the senator, and Cotton gave them until August 15th to do so. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
President Trump is expected to meet soon with both Russia's Vladimir Putin and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky. Putin says his meeting with Trump could take place in the Middle East. NTD's international correspondent Ariane Pozdar has the latest.
There's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
President Trump on Wednesday evening touting a possible meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The announcement came after a U.S. envoy had successful talks with Putin on Wednesday. Trump previously said Putin was just tackling him along, not actually seeking peace. The president makes clear that he doesn't know yet if the situation has changed by now.
Can't answer the question yet. I'll tell you in a matter of weeks, maybe less.
Also on Wednesday, Putin said his meeting with Trump could take place in the Middle East.
We have a lot of friends who are ready to help us organize such an event. Here is one of them, the President of the United Arab Emirates.
He added that he doesn't rule out meeting with Zelensky as well, but according to the Russian leader, it's still too early for that. Meanwhile, Zelensky says European allies must be involved in the peace process, posting, quote, "The war is happening in Europe and Ukraine is an integral part of Europe. We are already in negotiations on EU accession. Therefore, Europe must be a participant in the relevant process." Zelensky also says that Russia seems to be more inclined to make a peace deal after recent efforts by the U.S. Ariane Pozdar, NTD News.
The Kremlin says a one-on-one meeting was being planned. Putin on Thursday confirmed the plans for the meeting and said the United Arab Emirates would be a suitable location. But a White House official says no location has been finalized and Trump would only meet if Putin also agrees to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. If Putin refuses to compromise this time, what could the consequences be? Let's hear insights from senior China affairs expert Feng Wei.
Let's break it down. What would happen if sanctions on Russia are fully enforced? First, the so-called shadow fleets Russia uses to export oil would likely be intercepted by the U.S., cutting off a major route for Russian crude. Second, any country doing business with Russia would face steep U.S. tariffs and other sanctions. That could hit major economies like China, India, Brazil, and possibly even Turkey. Third, OPEC sides with the Trump administration and boosts oil production. It would drive global prices down, making it even harder for Russia to profit from its exports. The strategy? Squeeze Putin financially until he runs out of resources. As history shows, one of the most effective ways to win a war is to cut off your enemy's supply lines. Once that's done, the collapse can happen without a single shot. That's how Trump hopes to bring the Russia-Ukraine war to an end, by cutting off Putin's cash flow. Will it work? That remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, if secondary sanctions are triggered, it could shake the foundations of global trade.
Once vowing to compete with Tesla and Porsche in China, EV maker Polestar may soon drop out of the race. The company sold just 6 vehicles to Chinese customers in June, bringing its total sales in China for the first half of the year to fewer than 70 cars. Polestar is a Chinese-owned electric vehicle maker with Volvo and its parent company, China's Geely Holding Group, as major shareholders. Although Polestar's cars are manufactured in China, it's still been struggling to win over the world's biggest auto market, China. Polestar has only sold between 1,000 and 2,000 cars per year in China over the past 5 years. This year could be the worst yet, with only 69 cars sold in the first half of 2025. Polestar was nearly $7.4 billion in debt as of the end of 2024. Volvo also announced it's reducing its stake in the company and will no longer provide funding. A Chinese report says Polestar has shut down all of its 4S stores in China except one located in Shanghai. It's unclear whether Polestar will fully exit the Chinese market, but if it does, it won't be the first. Just last year, another Chinese EV brand, Jiyue, a joint venture by Geely and tech giant Baidu, shut down last year. Zooming out, in hopes of surpassing the West in strategic sectors like AI and electric vehicles, Beijing has poured massive funding into those industries. But the industries are now facing blowback from the very pricing war it started. As companies slash prices to compete, profits have collapsed, leaving many EV firms in deep financial trouble. Coming up, protesters in China chanting down with the Chinese regime after local authorities deployed mass special police forces to quash the protests. Details on how the clash spiraled into violence. Is the trade war just the tip of the iceberg, what the Trump administration may have missed in dealing with China?
What America needs to do is to really focus on changing the behavior of the Chinese leadership.
Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A small city in southern China's Sichuan province, Jiangyu, has become the focus of public attention in recent days. Mass protests triggered by social injustice have lasted about a week. Authorities have deployed special police forces to crack down on the crowds. Chants the regime fears most, down with the Chinese Communist Party, have also been heard on the streets. And a reminder, some viewers may find the following footage disturbing. NTD's Flora Hua brings us the story.
Early Tuesday in Jiangyu, screams, police sirens, and angry protesters shouting filled the city's streets. Following the protesters' chants, local reports say police fired tear gas and flashbang grenades into the crowds. The protests have continued day and night. Numerous videos show police officers provoking protesters. Those beaten by police ranged in age, from college students to senior citizens. Some of those approaching the crowds appeared aggressive. They're the local police SWAT team. Bystanders recorded some demonstrators being arrested and loaded into cages on a truck, typically used to transport pigs, a move seen as deeply humiliating those detained. This has sparked widespread online criticism condemning the local authorities. The protests have now spread hundreds of miles away to Kunming. On Thursday, a man was seen outside a tourist site holding a banner that read, "Step down, Xi Jinping." So what sparked these mass protests? A video recently went viral online showing several teenage girls bullying another girl, bragging that they face no consequences from law enforcement. Local authorities say the bullies have been punished, but Chinese media reports see otherwise. That has sparked anger among many local residents. They're now demanding proper punishment for the bullies. Flora Hua, NTD News.
Next Tuesday, August 12th, marks the deadline for the U.S. China trade truce. President Trump says he won't meet with Xi Jinping unless a deal is reached. Beyond rare earths, fentanyl, and the trade deficit, are there even bigger issues that haven't been discussed publicly? We spoke with Brad Good, the author of the China Blueprint, for his take. Brad Good, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
Now, there's been a slew of trade deals and, of course, the tariffs hitting in on all sorts of countries, but the markets are really still watching for that U.S. China trade deal. Now, President Trump addressed it a little bit on a recent interview on Squawk Box, saying if there is a trade deal, he might meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. But in terms of what should be in a U.S. China trade deal, how are you reading this?
Well, what I'm reading is that something that's unusual that is in the trade deal is the fentanyl. It's interesting that Trump is saying that if they deal with fentanyl, that they'll lower the trade percent from like 2025 down to zero. That's a very interesting thing to have in a trade deal that really doesn't fit. Trump also said that China's going to give access to the China market. We've done this before, right? We've been in this exact same spot when, I think he was less shrewd, less knowledgeable, but the trade deal he did with them before, China only lived up to 58% of what they promised to purchase. So it's not just the trade deal, it's the follow through. Will they execute? And what are you going to do? Keep bumping up tariffs higher if they don't let you into their market? So when I hear about the trade deal, I'm hopeful, and that's my problem is I'm always hopeful. I was hopeful at China's entrance to the World Trade Organization. I thought an economic agreement would translate into politically China being more liberal, and I was wrong. And so I view the trade deal with hope, but a good deal of skepticism, unfortunately.
China has a chokehold on rare earths, so China in the latest ones was saying, oh, we'll start letting, the U.S. get some of those rare earth, and in return, it sounds like the U.S. was handing over access to pretty advanced semiconductor chips that China obviously wants and in the past weren't really allowed to go in. Of course, the U.S. is saying these are the lower end of those high-end chips, but how are you reading this? Who has the leverage here?
So we want China to use our chips, so they're on our sort of technology and using our technology. We want them to use it. And I think that's why Trump said, okay, you can sell the chips. The rare earth issue, I think, is being hyped by the media. I don't think there's a lot of facts behind that. If you look at if America worldwide ramped up rare earth mining, there's 76 metric tons of rare earth available to be mined and only 44 metric tons in China. We could start recycling rare earth. Right now, America only recycles 1%. And if we start recycling in earnest, that will last us 3 to 5 years. And so I'm not buying this rare earth. I think that it was used as sort of an argument in the negotiation. That the United States says, hey, we need that. But I just don't think it's a huge sensitivity issue. I don't buy it. If we really needed more rare earth, we could get them through other countries and through, and even more from recycling. So I don't buy it.
U.S. China trade talk, the deadline is coming up, all these different avenues. What are you watching for to see where the talks might be going?
Well, my issue when it comes to trade, and I think this is very important, trade's not really the number one issue. Fentanyl's not the number one issue. Taiwan's not the number one issue. To fix the China problem, you need to have an effective strategy. What America needs to do is to really focus on changing the behavior of the Chinese leadership and developing a set of initiatives that foster that change. Okay. And I don't see Trump's administration doing that. In his last administration, Robert O'Brien and Mike Pompeo gave profound speeches on how China constituted an existential threat. But there's no strategy, right? I think the strategy should be to change the nature of the leadership so they are good corporate citizens or good world citizens and have some initiatives behind that. And I don't think Trump's administration is addressing that bigger issue. So I'll give you a personal example. When I speak on TV and I write books about China, my wife's parents in China get harassed. America's not playing at the level that China's playing at. We've sanctioned oligarchs in Russia, but we've never sanctioned Chinese. When Trump left office, President Xi sanctioned 28 of Trump's administrative officials. And the question is, why did he wait until after Trump left office? And I believe it's because he was scared that Trump would sanction other leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. And I think that's the sort of things that America should start to think about, is making sure we sanction the people who are responsible for the atrocities that China is conducting. and has conducted. And that would mean sanctioning 0.01% of the Communist Party. Okay, that's 10%. And you don't let their kids go to school in America or in London, and you freeze their assets. And you communicate. Here's an interesting number for you. What percent of Chinese citizens have ever heard and understood one single sentence that has come out of the White House? It's zero. It's zero. Okay, so America's communication strategy throughout the world needs to change, but also it needs to change so that it reaches the Chinese people. And that nothing has been done on that. I mean, we have the NSA that has a huge budget, and there's ways that we can do that. We have to have the right things to say to the people of China. They need to know what's going on. They need to know about fentanyl, right? So I view the whole China situation much differently than the administration. I think Trump is so busy that, in concluding all these trade deals, he has plenty of time to take care of that, at the right time. So he's got enough to do right now.
What would be your advice for some steps to start getting that into motion?
Well, I think first Americans need to understand the Chinese mentality, where it comes from. As China goes through these trade negotiations, they're going to think they're kind of like, people can think of China almost as a narcissist, as a pathological narcissist. They always feel like they've been picked on, like it's someone else's fault. And so you already hear, China's already said in these trade negotiations that the United States is bullying China, right? I think when it comes from a larger picture, I think America needs to bring in other countries where there's, according to Pew Research, very unfavorable views of China, right? Up in the 80s in all these different countries in Asia and Australia and so forth, and to unify people around a document that summarizes what China has done to its people and to the world. I think that'll help solidify everyone's understanding of China. And I think that'll humiliate China again. So you need to almost discredit the leadership to have an impact. And I know that sounds very unusual. And you need to do it consistently and do other initiatives over time, sanctioning the people, right? Sanctioning the leadership.
Brad Good, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Round the clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.